Bon matin à toi.
Bon matin à toi aussi.
Anick, I'm just gonna go into English because usually the conversations are so fluid, and that's the whole point of this podcast is just to have conversations around subjects that we're not necessarily exposed to, or that we are not necessarily used to, or that may be sometimes very uncomfortable for us to step into. So thank you so much for accepting my invitation to my podcast.
Thanks to you for inviting me.
The other thing that I wanted to say is interesting because the podcast is currently undergoing a rebranding from Re-envision to a podcast that is actually meant for us to walk together and to grow together and to evolve together. And when I recorded the last episode of the last season, I had two people that were scheduled to come on the podcast that for scheduling issues or like personal things that came up, we had to reschedule. And you're one of the two people. And what I find so amazing is that those two conversations were meant to be in the next one, or meant to be here right now. So thank you so much.
Thanks to you. Truly,
So
I like, go ahead. I'm not waking up totally yet. Yeah.
So welcome to Walk with Me. And today I'm actually walking with Anick Desrosiers. Anick, I would love for you to kind of say a few words on what you do in life, not just what you do in your professional life, but like who you are as a person that actually drove you to what you're doing in life.
Yeah. I think it had been a conversation. What I do have influenced what I am, and what I am led me to what I do, but I do it in a very different way now. If I simplify things, I would say that I work with everything related with homelessness, but also I work with people that had difficult life path and with the consequences of that. But it's really important for me to not work just with the individual, but to see this in the context of society, on the context like trauma happen within a society, trauma heals with people too. And that's what I work on, I would say. Right now, I'm doing my PhD on trauma recognition in organization that work in homelessness in Montreal, but I also work with people directly as a psychotherapist, as a worker in day center, and also as an activist. So that's what I do. I'm also a mother, a friend, a dog mom. I do a lot of things, but like to me, it's all related to building communities where everyone can have a place.
I love this. I love this. And I have to say, I'm a huge fan of you because of the way that you do things. And let me put the listeners in context. So we were connected. I don't know if you know this, but we were connected with a friend of mine who actually commented on Edison's profile. So Edison is your golden retriever, whom you created a Facebook account for. Can you walk us through a little bit why you actually did that?
Yeah, sure. Well, Edison is my partner. He is my friend, but he also I bring him in shelters, and he also worked with me on my PhD quite often. But Edison is really a way to make the contact. Like when you had difficult contact with humans and difficult experience, sometimes it's hard to connect with humans, but it's easier to do it with animals. So Edison is helping me getting in contact with people. And then I said, like, a lot of people don't want to talk about homelessness, don't want to hear about it because it's difficult. It's a hard subject. It forces us to look at ourselves as a society and look at things that we don't want to see. And Edison is a way for me to talk about that in a way that people are more open, like to talk about it simply and to join a picture of dog with it, so I can we can bring some message in a way that it's easier to accept for people.
And I love this, and it's easier way to like kind of dive in, because what I love about is when we're looking at everything that is going on, it can feel very heavy and very daunting, and like we don't even know like where the incoherences are. And Edison's voice kind of brings that forward, because he's very young and he's kind of like learning. Like the voice that he has is basically the voice that you gave him, which is he's looking through our human society, through his dog's eye, through the loving kindness, through that open-mindedness, and at the same time that little what's going on in this world, how is this making any sense, and how can we shift this, because you know.
Yeah, I think we should all look at life more like a golden retriever because they are full of love. That is, he's right here, right now. You hear that we talk about him, so we wanted to be there. Eh?
Oh,
Yeah, Edison, it's really interesting because even when I walk him in the streets and we're going places, Edison is really polite. You know, he's trained and all, but when he sees someone that is visibly in a situation of homelessness, because a lot of people are and we don't see it, but when he see people that are visibly, there's nothing I can do. We just want to go see them and be petted. Like I don't have no power anymore. He knows people and he loves them, and it's, I think we often talk about homelessness, like in my field, at least, in very serious tone, very, and it's important to do so, but it also calls to everybody can hear about homelessness. We can talk about it with children. We can talk about it because it's part of life. It's part of what doesn't work with our society. And there's way to talk about it that are more accessible to anyone. And like when you take golden retriever eyes, like that loving kindness tone comes easily. Even me as a person, sometime when I talk about it, I can get angry sometime. I can get in like, people don't understand, and like when it repeats again and again, that sometimes we just want sometime to shake people, but that's not the way you change things. Like we can get angry, we can get impatient, but I think this word needs more love. And when we go just through our internal impulses, like we just contribute to build a fight and not a place where we can understand more and create a place of dialogue. So that's what I try to do. And when I go through Edison, I kind of remember the tone that I want to have and the tone that is productive to help people just have a safe space to think about those hard subjects, and we can just talk about it like in a friendly way.
exactly, because basically the walls are not there when we're connecting with Edison, when we're connecting with a dog, like we or an animal. That's why, you know, zootherapy works so well. It's because there's no barrier, there's no baggage that actually comes with, so we can really get more into a place where we tap into that natural state that we all have, which is this loving kindness that we tend to forget so often because of what you're saying, like the turmoil that builds up, and sometimes the struggle that we have with what's going on, and the limited impact that we can have in it as an individual, but at the same time, like this calling that we have, like to assemble and like transcend that as a, you know, as a community. And this is where I started to follow Edison, and I just love his voice, and I love the way that he's, and I'm a dog mom too, so it really, like for me, like, and I say all the time, like my dog came into my life in a very dire place after my mom passed away. After I had a car accident, I was bedridden, and she came into my life. And I always say, like, I don't think that I rescued her. She literally rescued me.
Oh, totally. And in my work, like it seems that Edison is here to help me help other people, but he also support me every day. Like when I have a difficult intervention, when I find just that the whole society is difficult, like he is still there and loving and happy and wants to play and wants to connect. And I really think dogs bring us back to the best of our humanity if we really take the time to connect with them.
Yeah, it brings us back. I know that, you know, having a dog really taught me patience. It really taught me what it means to live in the moment, in the present, bring yourself back like to what is before, you know, like, and creating spaciousness and reconnecting to joy and, you know, happiness in the simplest moments of everyday life.
Oh yeah, and I see like people that go through things that are terrible, and when they connect with Edison, there's space that is open for the present moment, for joy, for just being together, for play, for like a lot of things that I cannot elicit as a human. So it's pretty powerful.
I love this. I love this. So that's how I got connected with you. And then I started to follow you and then we became friends. And really early, I actually sent you a message. And I remember I sent you a message and I was like, I just love what you do. Like, I know that it's going to come up like weird and I don't care because like, I think that when we do find people that we resonate with, that we connect with, that we can see that they're complementing what we're doing in this world. Like we need to tell each other because it can feel very lonely. And I love your I don't know if you remember what your answer was.
Don't. I don't.
You just said, I just love it because I'm the one usually that it's the weird one. So it's just, it feels so nice to receive, to be on the receiving end of this, right? Like, so we connected and I've been following you in I was gonna say the struggles, but there's not, it's like it's the struggle because like it's part of human experience, but it's this whole way of harmonizing our life between the puzzle pieces that are holding so much heaviness and yet bringing and taking care of herself in the process, you know, like as there's so much that is there where we want to help, we want to make a difference because we want to make a difference. Like having a sense of purpose is one of like the greatest things that we want as humans, but also like we are naturally inclined to relieve pain in others. And I've worked like with like in nonprofits, and I know that it could be very, very hard to set the limit between I'm connected to my purpose, I'm helping others, and but where do we pull back? Because there's always going to be needs. There is always going to be people that we have to, I don't know what the word is, but that there's always going to be needs and there's always going to be people that are left behind, unfortunately. And this is where there's two things that I think that happen is one, we need to recenter to take care of ourselves, and two, we need to change the system. And I think that's where you're at. So I want to know first, how do you as a person take care of yourself within this vast and moving puzzle of what you do as work?
Well, you said a struggle, and it is a struggle, I think, to stay well centered inside of you while keeping connected with the world. Because in the different circle I am in, I always hear some discourse that disturb me a little, I would say, where you concentrate your energy and delight, and we call it mindfulness, but it's only on ourselves. So we try to eliminate everything that is negative, that is not full of light, is not happy, and then we can be happy. I don't believe in that. I believe that it's very short-sighted ways of being happy, because we are all connected with each other and we are connected with our planet, we're in an environment, with the world. So we need to rely on those connections. But right now this society is not like really constructed like that. So to me, there's this struggle to stay connected with yourself, give yourself the right to joy, to connection, even if this word is like very, very imperfect. Like I realized at one point that I also needed to take care of myself. There was no shortcut for that. And it's something that is still difficult for me sometimes, because there's also a part of me that really thrive in helping others. And when you see that you can do things, you want to do more because it makes a difference. But you have to find a balance in that. But what I really feel that it's more grounding for me is to build communities and to be with other people that do the similar thing than you, and you can support each other, because it's normal that you will not crawl, you will, how can I say, what's the word? you will not be able to
Like
support
crumble under, you mean?
crumble. Yeah,
Yeah,
crumble
crumble.
under the weight of the word if you have the impression that you have to do it alone. And we all go like feeling that if we want to care about the world, we have to wear it alone, but we can do that together. And when there's a lot of shoulders, it becomes quite easier. It becomes possible to do some things, and it also becomes possible to be in a place where you can do things while supporting each other. So I really believe that we need to build communities and we build society differently so we can really rely on each other. And it is for the people that struggle, but it also for the helpers. We need to be more together. Like, and at one point, these categories just melt, and we are all just humans that try to do their best. So that's something I've connected a lot with recently. I've learned to be with others, to rely on them, and also to build this community where we can all be together. And sometimes just being together, knowing that these people know what you experience. These people still want to change the world too. These people find it hard, but we are together. It changed everything. Well, not everything, but a lot of
Well,
things.
it changes everything in the sense that it changed the whole perspective that we have on what we have to do and how we want to do it. There's for many years, it's interesting because for many years when I was in the corporate world, I had this has been a process for me too, and I had a post like on my um on my wall, and it was, these mountains that you are trying to carry, you were only supposed to climb. And I remember, like, must have been like 15 years ago. It was after, I was going back to on the workforce after, like a big pause after my mom passed away after my car accident. And I was so eager to like change things, and like move forward and be perfect, and like and at some point this is not sustainable. That's not something that we can actually like power through on a shortened period of time. But a sprint is a sprint, and we're in a marathon, so we need to figure out ways that our lights are continuing to shine and are continuing to go forward without being like suffocated by the dark, and like we're saying, crumbling under everything that we are doing. And at the same time, when we come together, I think that we are even clear on the blind spots that we might have not figured out, and we can really come together with like different ideas. And one thing that the last time that we had like our episode podcast recording schedule, like 2-3 days before, I actually fell upon an article that was talking about positive optimism and negative optimism. And I was like, in all my life, like since like I know that I started to talk about environment like when I was 8 years old. Like I have like a journal at elementary school that I started. Like the first thing was like how to take care of the environment. Like it's something that has always been like with me, like this community, this sense of connectedness, like being all together. And my dad he calls himself a realistic. And my mom and we were always like, no, you're not realistic, you're pessimistic. Because he's like, well, this is the way that it is and we can't do anything about it. And for the longest time, I actually was like, well, I'm not a positive person, because like I am a positive person, but I'm not like all rainbows and like rose glasses and like ignoring the fact that we are suffering and it is part of life, and so I must be a realistic. But I was like, no, it doesn't feel right. And then when I read that, I was like, oh my God, I am a negative optimist.
Well, if we have to lie to ourselves to believe in a positive truth, it's kind of toxic, because at one point, the reality you try to build in yourself doesn't fit with what's happening. So it makes also, I think it's toxic because it remove us the possibility to see the world with a clear stand and to work on changing it. If you don't recognize things that are happening, your world just keep becoming worse and worse. But I understand realistics like your father that believe that they cannot do anything. Like in the state of the thing. It's difficult to keep, and I will use this word, the faith. I really have faith in us, in community coming together. And there's a part of that, like, because I know with data and science that the resiliency that we came to build at something individual is something that can only be achieved by a community. But there's also a part of me where I see the worst of people and I see also the best of people. And I have to continue to believe like this word is still holding together. Like there's tons of things that doesn't work, but I see everywhere gesture of solidarity. We still have things like, we still have some organization that will help and support people for the sake of it. There's a lot of other thing happening too, but like we still, to me, love is the thing that keep the thing connected together. So I believe in that. And I have a faith believe in that. Like I could choose to be like, and it's just as realistic as having a pessimistic, to me, being realist means that you see the things that are going not well, but you also see the possibilities for you and for your community to make things better. And we can do that. The thing is that by collectively believing that there's nothing we can do, we just retreat in ourselves, in our direct family, and we give away our power to do things. We do.
We give away our power to do things. I love this. I love this.
And it's easier also for ourselves to think like, I totally understand that, like some realities of the word, if we are giving two possibilities to believe, like one, the word is good, or there's nothing you can do, and then like, but like it's mostly good and you can just, or the word, there's very difficult things that are happening. Most people will choose the possibility where nothing happened that you can change, but you can. The thing is that we still can. And if we would come together in understanding our power and believing in it, there's so many things that would change so easily. I mean, I will say this big word because it doesn't feel easy at all, but I really think that if we come together, it becomes easy. That's the art part, coming together.
Yes. I love that you actually mentioned, like, because I love all of this. I'm a person of faith and I'm a spiritual person. And I've for a long time have not acknowledged that part of me until the last year for sure, but like the last years. But I'm also like, I'm a trained biologist. I have a bachelor's in biology. I have a master's in biology, ecology, evolution, you know? So there's a very big part of me that is on the science space. And what I love about what you just said is that there's an innate revelation of my heart and an inner wisdom of my soul that knows that love is the cement, right? And when you look at the science supports that, right? And when you're looking at people that are engaged in community and forming community on the long word, the impact that it has, the positive impact that it has on their lives outweighs the negative of the things that they have to go through this. And this is the interesting thing that I keep on coming back when people are saying like, well, no, and they're shutting down and they're actually going their own thing. We are social animal. We're built in being together so much that our entire health and wellness depends on it.
It hurt us. It hurt us to be cut from our communities, to be cut from our support, to be cut from the nature. It hurt us. And the more we do it, the more we are all collectively in a protective stance where we cannot, like, it's more and more risk to connect. But like, that's also a gesture of faith to say, I believe in that, and I will still continue to do it, even if it's not the mainstream things. And as you say, you realize when you do it that this fight, I think that's the good word, this fight for love, for community, for solidarity, for all that, it just appear heavy, but if people do it and continue to do it, it's because it brings you something too. Like I said, it made me, like, it destroyed totally some parts of me. I have to say, like, sometimes I am that negative person that doesn't believe in anything, but nothing will never be able to break the other side that built in the same time, the love, the community, the belief that we can do something better. And I believe in that because I see it. I see how it changed people. And there's things that maybe people cannot understand if you don't participate in it. I have the example that coming, I was talking with a friend recently. Why do you even go to protest? Like, do you really believe that going out in the street, like, it's gonna make the government change what they think and blah, blah? And honestly, I don't. I don't believe that doing protests will, like, influence often, like, it just make, like, you're that gang and there's another gang, but it brings people together. If you have been in a protest with other people that you don't know, and we all connect together for a moment to say this thing is important for us so much that we will all, it's not enough, it's not all, like, it's not the only thing you need to do, but coming together and just affirming, like, we believe in this, we think it's important, and we feel the together energy. I think these protests have been the spark of many people to understand that there's something to gain also in that fight. It's not only like dark and like going, like, my subject is trauma and homelessness. People often tell me, like, how can it be darker? Like, it's so dark. But every day in my work, what I see is like the light when it's dark, and you see like people resiliency, people like the thing that continue to work. Like, it's not like it's beautiful. It's beautiful, and people often are there for a moment, but they can also get out of this. My work is the most beautiful work anybody can do. And yeah, it's dark too. That's the realist part. Like, you have to see the world as it is to change it. There's no shortcut to that.
I love this. I love this. And that's what a negative optimist is. It's actually like, we know that we can strive for more, but we can actually have our eyes on the areas that need to be addressed, and how do we address it, and coming together. You know, we all feel in this that it's important, and then when we come together, we feel seen, validated, heard, and then we can actually build further and leverage all of that. I just love this. Yes.
Right, we
Yes.
have to do with a community recently. Like, in the recent year, I did like a tattoo in my, I don't think you can see it. It's a geese, and I have some in my back. And I think it really represent to me what we need to build to be able to do it sustainably. Geese, we often have the impression that there's a leader, like they go in triangle, but the way it works, there's no leader. When the leader is tired, you just go backward, and you will benefit from la traînée. I don't know how you say that. You will fly in the open air of the other geese in front of them, and they just change like that. They do it as a group, because if you do it like always with the same person leading, it gets exhausting. It just gets impossible. When you do it as a group, you have the right to be tired one day and not be there. You have the right to just like let yourself be taken care by others, and when you have found your energies back, you can be back in leading, and we can do that together. So if you do that alone, I don't think those geese could do this big trip alone. They would be so tired, they would be exhausted, and they will lose the meaning of it. But you're going somewhere with, like, I'm sure you have heard this thing, like I don't know how this exactly, alone you're going faster, but like together
We're going further.
further. And I think
Yeah.
it's very true.
I didn't know about because you have so many nice tattoos, and I didn't realize the geese one. And I think that it's very interesting because you know, it speaks to aerodynamics, you know, like, so, and like you said, like the one that is at the point of that V it changes all the time, you know, like, and they're relaying each other, and they're benefiting from the not the drag, but like the pole, you know, like that little, so it's all about aerodynamic. And I'm loving where this is going, because there's two things that I keep on seeing, and that I work with my clients, and then that I'm in groups with other women. there's two key areas and two skills that we need to deepen, that we need to embrace, leverage, get better, and it's our leadership, but a leadership that is feminine in the sense that it's not like it's one person that is at the top, but like it's more of it's a self-led, and we're actually like coming forward. So when I'm feeling like that I need support, then I actually know that I can take a step back, like you just said, because I know that collectively we have built leadership to lift us up. There's always going to be somebody that is gonna be on the point of that triangle. And yet at the same time, the problem that we have is that we are not used to that type of dynamic. And we have had very little experience of that, of being in rooms that are with leadership like that. So when we feel vulnerable, we actually like are so strong. We've been doing this for so long that we think that we have to keep on going. When the other part that we need to, so we can self-lead, but the other part that we need to deepen is embracing our vulnerability, because that also means that we are open to know where we need to take care of ourselves, that we know how to ask for help, that we know how to receive. And that, I think, is even more, the word that comes to mind is broken, but it's not broken, but it's broken. I think that it is a way of being that we have lost with the dissolution of our society. And yes, we're talking about leadership, and that actually is on the forefront, but that part is so important. And I'm going to let you speak to this, because helping people with trauma and through healing is a big part of that, because we all are moving into this life with like trauma, and we push through and we move through this and we power through, but at the same time, like we're all like tick-tocking bombs, like that are unable to unload, in the sense that it's ballast that we're keeping, and it weighs us down. So on top of everything that we're going through that is heavy, that ballast is also like something that we don't have to carry. But how do we go about it if I don't know how to be vulnerable, if I don't know where to find spaces, if I don't,
Yeah, I've learned a lot on all of this. I think on the path to learn to find your own strength and your own balance, there's a lot of that, for me at least, that was made by failing. I burned out. Like, I'm still often like at risk of burning out. And yeah, for me, like learning to trust people in an imperfect system. Like I often felt like I was like the head of the V for something that were really important to me, and I had to stay there, because if I'm not there, everything's gonna crumble and nothing's gonna work. And that's how I felt. And it was hard for me to learn to trust that other people will be there. Other people will continue maybe differently, like what I do, and what they will bring different will bring something that is needed too. So I think there's some of my energy when I lead now that go into transmission. There's things that like sometimes I take a leading role, but I would say I'll take a leading role behind sometimes younger, sometimes less experienced people in some things, because I want them to become strong. I want them to become confident. And I do that for the sake of the community. But I realize that when I do that, I can also rest after, because they are awesome and they bring something different. When we are many people that can do it, like we just like put our strengths together. I'm really weird in those things. Like sometimes I really see like the kind of work I do, like we are a group of Care Bear, you know, and they had all their power that they send to the world. Some are rainbow, some are things. And I see the work we do a bit like that, like sometimes that's very simple and childish, but I kind of like it. And there's many action that I did recently that were like that, like where I really felt that I had something important to bring and but to share. And I didn't want to take the leadership position. I wanted the younger, the people that were still have the fire to do it, but also in a way that they can learn to take care of themselves, because like we do that sometimes, like we gave all we can, now we push the younger one and they will also give their fire until they burn out, and then someone else will come. Like, how can we do that to keep the community healthy and support each other? Sometimes my role will be just to morally support those people, because I also know how it can feel. So I kind of forgot what was your question. I just went.
I first of all, I love the Care Bear analogy because I always say that as well. So I think that because it's your birthday today, and we're the same generation, we're the same age actually, and so yes, so for me, because all the Care Bears, they had their own powers, and we're so busy like trying to be like the other ones, but no, you have your own power, you have your own strength, you have your own everything, you know. Like I always have this the Care Bear because of all the colors, but like this imagery that we're all part of a whole, and somehow when we came into this human experience, we were shattered in like millions of glass pieces, and the light comes through us in a different way, and we have to stop thinking that everything that has happened to us is a drawback, because when we're putting it on the forefront, we actually shed the light to complete the other pieces. I am having shivers right now just saying this, but we need to tap into our vulnerability. We need to actually like be aware of where, you know, like I was talking in one of the containers today, like what's the difference between like discomfort and trigger and trauma and re-traumatization, like all of those words, like so we can actually understand what's going on within and understand what's going on in between us, right? Like, because sometimes we're just like talking to traumas when the humans are just like at that. So my question was like the leadership, yes, it's so important, and the changes are in our leadership like you're doing, you know, like it's so important. The piece that I would love for you to weigh on is how do we tap into that vulnerability? How do we find communities that we actually like heal without re-traumatizing? How do we build communities that are more trauma informed, not just the people that are on the forefront, but like as a society, that how can you bring more of that information? Because I think that when women realize the power in this, we're truly going to be unstoppable because of all the abilities that we have.
I think it takes courage to really go into vulnerable space. But the thing is that when we use that courage, we also build strength doing it. Like being vulnerable, show us that it's a strength, and we become more strong and more able to face our own truth and also other people's truth. And I think there's a lot of theory and big framework about being trauma informed, and sometimes it even becomes like a kind of token word. I would say organizations say they are trauma informed because they do this like this thing, but like we all have it inside of us. Like we know when we are triggered, usually what we need and what we can offer other people. If we connect to ourselves and to other, we can usually feel what it means to be in a safe community and what we need to build it. There's a lot of trust involved, like the group that like I feel I can be the most myself and vulnerable. It's often because we have worked together, and I know by experience that I can be vulnerable, and I also know by experience that we will do mistake between each other, and there's ways to repair. We can repair. We can trust each other that we're all imperfect. We will all do like small mistake, big mistakes, but we can like build together. And I think it takes time, and it takes like that everybody that is in the group. Sometimes we experimented it in smaller group without before we can do it like on a larger level. And when you do that, when you show you have the courage to be yourself, I would say just be yourself. I think it's an act of courage pretty often. Even when you bring,
Totally.
oh yeah, it is. When you bring that in circle that they are not used to that, the reception sometime will be, they will look at you a bit weird, but you can, I think it also open permission for others to be vulnerable. So it's difficult because in a world where vulnerability is not like that accepted and open, you are often, when you do it, kind of the leader, the tired leader that will lead the way. But you also learn other people to do the same. And I think people see that like, it was a long way to me to just like, if I can become more personal, like I for a very long time, I tried to be normal, beige, not like that. Everybody would love me because I'm so normal. Like there's nothing I do that is weird. And I realized with time that being myself is why people actually love me for me, and that's where the love can land in me too, because I know that they love me for me. They don't love me for that thing that I've built especially for them. Like they when we connect for real. We connect like in between others, and me being myself give them the permission of it, creates some possibility for more. And I do that in my work. I do that when I teach also. I know that that's not a very usual way to teach, but when I teach at the University of Montreal, and I teach to future social worker. And I think it's really important for them also to learn to embrace their authenticity, their vulnerability, so they can connect also with their client with a more like egalitarian way and bring something. But to do that, you have to experiment it. And like, I think you can experiment it with your teacher. Like it's something that so yeah, my seminar groups are really like, I try to create safe space where people can, I don't want to hear about what they do well. I don't want to hear about how good they are. I want to hear their question, their doubts. I want to be there for the time where they don't know why they are in social work anymore. Like, why would I do that? That's what I want to hear. And the thing that it's easy in those groups is that I don't take it personally. The group takes it. You create like a space where the group can be together and support each other. So it's just different place where you can experiment those things, and like planting little seeds everywhere so people can experiment it for themselves and maybe go a bit further. But it's a creation, it's a construction, it's not done yet, and it's a process. We're trying to go somewhere, and we'll see where it leads. It creates things while trying, and you don't know where you're going with that. You just like do it. I feel I go like all the way with your question, but those are really interesting questions. So yeah.
I love this, and that's why there's no template. It's just it's a conversation that we're having, and like the more that we're talking, the more I'm like, oh, like this is so cool because, like I've witnessed so many people that are like reluctant to doing this work, like, and I'm always aware of what my role is as a naturopath or a life coach or a mentor, where I'm not a therapist, but I can actually like guide the people. And a lot of the times because there's so much stigma around therapy, that my fear is not that those people will necessarily end up with somebody that is not a therapist. My fear is that they will never go to a therapist to get the help that they need. So when we're speaking from our heart as a human, I think that it's interesting to be aware of this, where there is stigma. I don't want you to fall back into like being in your little shell. So let's talk. Let's go for a walk. Let's unravel this in a way that is so natural, by going the way where you're building trust in others, but you're also building trust in yourself. You're showing vulnerability, but like every time that you do, like, yes, it's scary, yes, it's uncomfortable, but at the same time, you're building more strength. And like and when you're building more strength, you're actually getting into a place where, well, you can actually go a little bit further, and then your zone of comfort basically gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So I just love where you're taking this conversation, because it's so important. And I love that you're working with the next generation in a certain way. I know that you're very you're very aware of and I had a podcast episode on this. You're very well aware of neurodivergence, like in neurodiversity, and how we all learn in a different way, and like bringing that to the forefront would also comes back to like, who am I? How do I function? And embracing that more and more than the result and the structure and so yes, it's difficult because we're stepping out of a structure that is actually holding things together, but at the same time, we're at a place where we need to get out of that structure because we're suffocating.
Yeah.
And while we're building something else, it isn't perfect, but how cool is that?
Let's try something else. Like, it's like, it doesn't have to even work. We just know that the usual way that we do, it doesn't work that much. So how can we just bring something else? And I really like to think about, like, I've been trained in social work extensively, also in psychotherapy, and I'm very critical of the way that we build some professional that have the knowledge of everything and can guide you because they know. We don't know, honestly, more. We know some things, but the person that know herself best is the person. And hopefully we have knowledge, we have tools, we have skill where we can encourage the person, like, to go into herself and find her strength. But like, this whole society is built on power, and I really question the way, because like, we're supposed to accumulate it and keep it the most possible. What if we took power and distribute it back to people it belongs to? Because even as an academic, that's what I'm supposed to do. Like, when I do research, I take people knowledge. It's their knowledge. I learn from them. Like, it's nothing that I create. I take what is there and I bring it back, and it's supposed to be mine. And then I'm super brilliant because I put something together and that's my discovery. That makes no sense. So I think as a researcher, I also have to learn back to work with communities and like produce things that are useful to them, because like the whole academic world is constricted so it can bring back to me. And I don't want that. Same thing in teaching, same thing in like even in psychotherapy work. Sometimes like it's much more reassuring for us therapists to figure that we have the knowledge, we share it, and if people are not able to understand and to do it, it means that they are not good, but we did our job well. Like, we're not encouraged to question ourselves that much, to re-question our approaches, and to see in what we contributed to this person not being able to connect with us, or to. So yeah, in everything I do, I really try to at least be open and mindful that the way that the power society gives me like does not impede in me connecting with people and supporting people. And yeah, the question of power is another one we could talk
Oh,
for a long
it's
time. Yeah.
it actually is. And it's interesting when because we're so used to it, so we're kind of like going that way. But when you sit down and you're thinking about it, like I've had the opportunity to work like with a therapist that was not that, like, and it would, and for like after my divorce, like 15, 16 years ago, and like sporadically when my mom, passed away, like I was reconnected with her. She has been with me like continuously, but like in special times in my life. And it's interesting that the dynamic that we have created to help people claim back their sense of agency and their own power to heal is actually based on a structure that is not supportive of that.
Yeah.
So I love that you're bringing this forward in this conversation. The so I'm going to go back to homelessness because even if all of this is absolutely amazing, I want us to talk about the stigma around homelessness, how the stigma of homelessness. I'm going to open the mic for you just to talk about how you're seeing this whole thing, and then I'll just.
Yeah, I think it's really easy to have a misconception of homelessness because we all have the impression that we know it because we have seen it. But the thing we see about homelessness, like, it's really not what it is, because we will see some old man in the street and we can recognize it. It looks like what we know of homelessness. So we know, we see often people, we see them when they disturb in public place or things like that, but we never see the history, why people are like that, why they act like that, how we as a society contribute to create that too. And I would also say, like, when I work downtown, mainly downtown Montreal. So I've worked in many shelters for my research and also as a worker. Most people I see that are homeless, like when I work downtown, I always see people that are in situation of homelessness. And I would say 80% of them you would know. It's not possible to see. Like, most people, they want to hide it because they know how it's judged. For women, it also put them in a situation of extreme vulnerability. When people know that you have nowhere to go and no place to be, like, some people will take advantage of it. So it's really to preserve your inner, like, safety and everything. A lot of people will just make it invisible. They will hide from, like, for their situation being visible. So the part we see and can recognize as homelessness, it's a really tiny part. And also often I will see, like, in my area, like a bicycle gets stolen. Like, there's a lot of homelessness in my area where I live too. Like, it's the homeless, it's always the homeless. But it's not because you see someone, like, shouting in the metro and acting weird in our society that they are homeless. We have to think about that. It's not because someone look homeless that he is homeless also. So being homeless is a lot of different people that share that characteristic. They don't have a home right now. They don't have a safe place to go and to go back. And there's some that are visible, most are not. So it have happened to a lot of people and we don't know as well. Sometimes it's also difficult for us to recognize that it have happened to us. And a lot of people are protected from that because I don't know, for you, for me, if I find myself in a situation that I lose my home that I like, or something happened bad, I have a tribe around me. Don't have a family, but I built one, and there's people around me that can help. Some people don't have that. And we all have, like, there's this thing in psychology we call the belief in a just world. We have it at different degree. The more you have it, the more you're happy usually, but it's also belief that is not anchored in the reality. We want to believe the word is just, but when we believe the word is just, it also often we believe that everything happened for a reason, and that person, she probably deserved it in some way or situation. Like, when I hear people's story, very often I think that I've heard everything that I could heard, and I'm still being like
Surprise.
I'm surprised all the time by the variety of ways the life can hurt some people. And I say life, but I would say human. Basically, it's what I see. It's human that have been hurt by other humans. And that makes it hard because we also need humans to thrive. So when you need them, but you cannot trust them, it's hard. And maybe I would say a word about trauma too. In psychology, in psychiatry, like, trauma really have been made into this it's even like in the DSM for criteria. Trauma makes you have unreasonable beliefs about the world. You don't see world as it is, like, you see world in a deformed way. I would say these people I see, they trauma is also, their experience is a knowledge of the world. It's a different experience. They don't have the same experience than other people have been, but they have a deep knowledge of their word. And so in some aspect, they know the word more than a lot of people. So we will often look at them as, their brain doesn't work. Their brain work differently, and their brain have learned in a way that makes sense with the word they were in. So I really see that as a situated knowledge, I would say, but it's knowledge. And the way we look at people that have experienced trauma as if they are not really coherent or reasonable, or their reaction is too much, is not like that's a problem. That's a problem because we already put ourselves, normal people, like there, and they are there because they are broken. But maybe we have a lot to learn about their world, because their world is also our world. It's what our world make to some people. So
Yeah, it's kind of like I love that because it's kind of like their experience of the world is at a depth that makes it that it makes it maybe narrow, but it makes it so much textured in their experience. Like our experience might be like broader, I guess, but they have more knowledge of like this depth of like what it is to be in this situation, and their experience that they're drawing from it. And you were talking the DSM-4, and I live in Germany, and like there's I've always been like interested in history and geography and like the way that the world works, but like there's a disconnect like when you're in Montreal in Canada, in a fairly safe and advanced country, that when you're seeing what's going on in the world, you feel very remote, you feel very disconnected. But when you're living in a place where you see the impact of all of those moving puzzle pieces in the world history, and the impact that it has on the people and the generational traumas that are actually like passed on generations down, 4 generations down, when like the 4 generations down did not have the experience of the trauma there, but because of that behavior, it trickles down right to the generation and generation. So I'm looking at all of this, and I was looking through like recently stuff, and I was shocked to learn that PTSD has been introduced into DSM in 1980, when we have like accounts of war fatigue that we used to call it 4,000 years before Jesus Christ, and you're just like, hold on a second, like there's so much of our psychology that we're just like at the surface, like we're just striking in the science way, but when we're looking at the wisdom of our soul, of our hearts, like the healing has been there, even if the science was not there. So I think it's very interesting that you're putting back in context where we're saying like the people that are having trauma, they have a skewed understanding of what the world is, but like we need to take a look at what that means, because first we can help them find a way to heal, not heal them, help them find a way to heal. But also all these little layers give us information for us to see the world in a broader sense.
what you just point that out is really interesting to me. It's also, what can we recognize as a valuable experience we can recognize? Because the recognition of PTSD came with, like you said, veteran coming back for the war. And the first diagnosis, these guy, like that I've seen, guy mostly,
Yes.
that I've seen terrible thing when they come back, like they were diagnosed with hysteria. they were acting like crazy women. The way we see those crazy women acting, those guys were coming back and exhibiting the same behavior. Like, how does it make sense? But it took like so much more time to be able to recognize like what we knew from a long time. There's people that like the old history of diagnosis of hysteria is interesting. Like when you look at it, it looks like much more like complex trauma or trauma, but it's woman experience. And when if we recognize that collectively as a group, like women was experiencing that, it would also lead us to question, what do we do to women for them to react like that? So let's just say that they're crazy. Something in their ovarian that happening. Like it's not their place in society, or how we tolerance the violence against them. And like I get in trouble each time for talking about that. And I know like it's I apologize in advance for all my friends that are in love still with Freud, which I like him. He bring important things, but Freud have discovered things about trauma. And like before, like he was known for his more wide stream theory. And when he bring that in society, like saying that like those women like that come and act like that, it's because they have experienced thing in society. Like, and he was seeing like women of higher class, like it led to question what their women were experiencing, and like it open question about society. And he retract himself. He retracted himself. And then another like known researcher at this time like was looking at the same thing and persisted in that. And you don't hear about him anymore. Like you can see him in a storybook, but that's not something we want to hear. There's very interesting book that have been done about like the recognition of trauma, and how like we keep rediscovering trauma because it's kind of knowledge we prefer to forget. Because when we go deep into trauma again, we say, oh yeah, it have personal effects, like, and things are happening. And then we go to, oh yeah, things are happening in our society. Oh, let's not talk about it. It's too much. So, and even for us, defense mechanisms are a real thing for us, for society. When the stories are too hard, we are wired to not want to have them because it's hard to see. But some people don't have that choice. They don't have the choice to shut their eyes and their experience on what happened to them and what's still happening to them. So that's why we have to, it kind of connects to what we were saying too, like we have to fight to keep our eyes open. And like mindfulness also mean to see the hard thing, the bad thing, while continuing to see how we can do something. So it doesn't, but it's hard. I went into so many things so fast. I don't know if it made sense.
It does. It absolutely does. It does. And while you were talking, I was like, there's a pattern here, right? Like there's like that's my scientist mind, you know, like I actually see patterns all the time, and like it's a pattern because we need to go down that road, but at the same time, we don't want to go down that road because it's a mirror of our own stuff, you know, like, and so whether we're talking about trauma, whether we're talking about homelessness, whether we're talking about like anything that makes us uncomfortable and a little vulnerable, and like, we just want to shut it down. And you recently made a post about that saying, you know, a lot of us have the luxury to close our eyes, but a lot of us don't. And there's also the ones that are that would have the luxury to sort of close your eyes and would have, you know, to a certain extent, but they do decide to stay in that to help the others, you know, like, and for the reasons that we were talking about earlier, which is like, yes, it is hard, but at the same time, it is how we are wired. So it's kind of interesting how this whole dynamic works, you know, all those moving pieces are working, because on one end you just want to unplug, but on the other end, if you're unplugging, then you're not getting the benefits of what it is to be connected.
And
So
that's why we need trauma-informed community. It's not only for the people that have experienced trauma and need those softer space and all that. It's also for us to help us to continue to be able to see and to be there. And like, it's not in forcing thing. I believe it's in putting more understanding, more comprehension, more empathy, and talking about this discourse about trauma, like in a way that it doesn't trigger all our defense mechanism, because we want to protect from that too. Like often I will even feel myself like with the reality, I'll feel my own desire to just like go sell flowers or I don't know what, but to retract from that. And yeah, that's why like we need to change the way, and we're not there yet. We're not there at all, if I can say so.
No, but we're aware, we're made aware, and we're bringing more stuff to the table. And I love that there's a creative piece that we talked about, which is the, you know, getting together to find creative way to try stuff and be willing, allow ourselves and be willing to go that way. And in many different ways, I see so many, like I was talking to a friend, like her sister just opened an art therapy, you know, like the Edison is an example. Like there's so many like different ways that we can bring our own light to all of that, all the dimensions of what it is to be human, and the struggles that we have, but also like inevitably we're going to have to deal with sad emotions, grief, and everything. Yes, it's good to anchor in, but it's actually hard to anchor in and to still lift it. We have to cultivate the other side of the lever, right? The longer the lever, the heavier the load. So if we're not allowing ourselves, because we're too much into that, if we're not allowing ourselves for joy and gratitude and happiness, then it's harder to lift, you know, like, so, and having other people cultivating that with us helps to unload. So there's a whole bunch of like different ways that we can go about it and creatively lift ourselves and lift each other and create like new paths and new ways. And this is so cool. And this brings me joy, just because I know that we are workers out there that are coming together and they're speaking about this these hard topics, but in a way that is,
yeah, I see like the way people do things. Some people, I don't know, are really, I'm going to take a crazy example, but are really good at doing bread. But the way they do bread, bring into the world, like bring some relief, some love, something. And like it becomes like a community creation where you don't see sometimes the impact you have, but the way you do things, the way your art is open and can continue to be open, like working is homelessness, like it's not the only way like to be supportive to people experiencing homelessness. There's so many other ways, and they don't need to be directly involved. Like some people will find it too difficult, and it's okay. Like it's okay, but there's so many ways like to help, to support, to be there, to start like with exploring how to be different in this world, how to connect, how to relate, how to, like, trauma is also, to me, the more we have a traumatogenic word, I would say, we're traumatogenic world, not a world, a planet.
yes,
like
world.
difficulty with this word. Like what a trigger is when like your own internal alarm system is triggered with your experience, like in your embodied self in the world, like just encounter something and your alarm system is triggered because you have experienced this as dangerous, or it is dangerous for you. So it totally makes sense. What we do in therapy is we recalibrate the system, the alarm system, so people can also enjoy the things that are not dangerous and stop seeing them as dangerous. But it all started by recognizing that their body was full of wisdom and trying to protect them. And that happened on the individual level, but it also happens on the collective level. So sometimes we are triggered, like, and we see that that place is dangerous, that place is where I feel powerless, like, and we do current action in this world. Like, we need to recognize that the way we react, like, makes sense. And also that sometimes it doesn't serve us, so we need to be mindful about this, so we want to have a fuller, richer life and richer communities. But to me, the two both are embedded. Like when since I talk about trauma, people invite me sometime to talk about self-care.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, yeah, self-care, yes, but like self-care had become a pressure, like to take care of yourself in a very like sometimes I feel bad because I didn't have the time to take care of myself, and like you have to do everything, and self-care become another obligation. And then if you fall into being exhausted, it's your fault. It's your fault. Like you didn't do what it need. Other people can do it. Why can't you? So I think it's why we really need to link together self-care and community care. Both go together, and like we have to build those community, because we're getting good at self-care, but like when we forget the other part, it becomes like a personal burden, and we're not all equal. Like we're in our ability to do self-care. Like I would propose to women I see that are in the street that have like to look every day for a place to sleep, a place to eat, a way to stay in security, to do some self-care, like in the way like I would do it. And I also remember like when I was a student, like struggling with so many things in my life, in my family, being a single mom. Also, like my teacher would make us do in social work a journal of self-care. With I hated that. Like, I'm like, I can't. Like, self-care for me right now is taking time to do the dishes and find other ways to do things. But I cannot like practice self-care as you do, because I don't have a community. Like, that's also what community gives us. It creates space for us to be able to take care of ourselves sometimes. So both go together. Both go together, and we cannot really do one without the other. And
Without the
some people
other.
can more than other. Like when you
Yeah,
can
because sometimes just be sitting together, like in the space and not talking, is an act of self-care. Sometimes, like that's why I call this podcast Walk With Me. Sometimes just going for a walk, and there's also like a powerful, like for ourselves, going for a walk, like because it moves grief, it moves sadness, it moves like, but there's actually also science, like with walkers together, there's actually like there's a resonance that is created that brings people like together. Like there's a healing part, like in relationships when you have struggle, like going out for a walk together is, whether you're talking or not, just doing the action creates spaciousness for the communication later on to be there. And yes, I think that we have put self-care like on the to-do list again, like another thing that I have to do, like, but self-care, like when you're talking about like just taking three big breaths is self-care. Slowing down for a second or two while you're doing the dishes is self-care. Like this doesn't have to be overcomplicated. And I think that the industry of self-care has kind of like taken out and like you push a lot of things, but the simplest thing can be our self-care, especially when we're dealing with, like you said, like with situations that are difficult, like I remember when I was a student too, like what do you mean self-care? Like, like between them.
trauma to me like, is disconnection. Trauma, the impact of trauma is disconnection, like because you cannot like handle and see its disconnection with yourself and with the others. So I feel like to go and affront life, affront was not the affronter la vie. Yeah,
Engage with life, to just go with engage with life. Yeah.
care is about reconnection. So it's, for me, care is reconnecting with myself first. And then when I'm connected with myself, I can also do community care to reconnect with others. But when I go take a walk, I connect with myself. I hopefully connect with my environment. And sometimes if I go with a friend, I also connect with a friend. So like, to me, like care is about connection. How do I care about those relation within me and outside me? And sport do that. But there's also a way to do sport that like really trigger disconnection. Like it's a good way sometimes to hate you and disconnect with yourself. You do that because you hate yourself, and so unacceptable how you are that you have to make yourself suffer to be differently. Like that. So it's the way we do things. Like we can do sport and it's not self-care. We can do sport and it's self-care. Like even eating ice cream, sometimes like it's something I do for myself. What do I want? I want that sweet connection with my papille gustative so I can like enjoy the richness, but being really there. It's not like mindlessly like eating all the ice cream and feeling guilty. It's no, it's choosing to have this ice cream and really enjoy it. And that way you don't go over the old pot, like, just because like you cannot enjoy like ice cream for so long, like really tasting it, it gets on your, but like, yeah, it's the way we do thing and the way we foster connection. Like there's a lot in that, and fostering connection with yourself, with others, with nature. We're all connected anyway. So if we
Yes.
take of these care of these connection, they become bad, we become less connected, but doesn't mean that we don't need to be connected with ourselves, others, and the nature. So we can do it also mindfully, like taking care of those connection. And we
Connection.
don't do that, like if we don't do that for ourselves, like it's really difficult to do it in community and to be connected with others. Also, the more we are aware of how things go in ourselves, the more we can become attuned to others too. So that's a big work, but that's a lot of fun too.
I love it's connection and slowing down. It's actually two things that I'm always mindful of because yeah, you're right. Like any tool can be used to any means, but
Yeah.
when we're doing the things for the reasons that are supportive of our connection and that quality of connection within and with other, that is where to start. And that's always when we're lost in this whole big world and we don't feel like we have any, we feel like we're untethered or we don't have any, floor under our feet, like coming back to that connection is where to start. And
Yeah.
Nick, that was amazing. Thank you so much for coming here, sharing with me all your wisdom, like of heart, but also like your experience on the field. I feel like we could have talked for hours. I feel like you're gonna come back and we're gonna talk more at a later period. And until then, I am thanking you from one human to the other for being in this world and for being you in this world.
Well, thank you for that, like authentic and meaningful connection. I feel there's a lot happening when we just take the time, like to be together.
Absolutely.
Do
Thank you.
do I